So unless you've been trapped under a blood ocean with no internet, you probably know that Markiplier's Iron Lung premiered last weekend to overwhelming success. And if you didn't know, Markiplier is one of the things that I am hyper enthusiastic about, so I thought I'd talk about it. And don't worry, if you haven't seen the movie yet, this video will be spoiler free. But before I get into that, I do want to address the elephant in the room. I have been MIA from YouTube for just about 2 years because I was dealing with burnout partially caused by my other channel, which I talk about it more over there, but the content here will be changing slightly too, so I just wanted to briefly touch on that. I'd always intended for this channel to be kind of a dump space for whatever I'm hyper-focusing on in the moment, but then I never ended up branching out from Five Nights at Freddy's. Which will still be a big part of this channel, but there will also be things like this video, where I talk about whatever has captured my hyper-focus in the moment. So I just wanted to clarify that this is not solely a Five Nights at Freddy's channel. I am working on a FNAF theory currently, but I'm also working on some stuff for Hazbin Hotel, and I'll probably cover most if not all major Markiplier projects. Those are my main 3 special interests right now, so that will probably take up the majority of the content, but there are other things that might pop up here and there as well. So now, let's get into Iron Lung. First, disclaimer, cosmic horror isn't my usual genre of movies. I have nothing against it. The Thing, for example, I think is a great movie. It's just not the kind of thing that I usually gravitate towards. My go-to horror movie is slasher movies, which is very different. So I was excited for Iron Lung because it was a Markiplier project, but it wasn't really the type of movie that I would have gone to see otherwise. I absolutely had faith in him to make a great movie, but I wasn't sure how much I personally would be grabbed by it. So I was glad that I'd be going to go see this movie with my husband, who is also a big Markiplier fan, but whose favorite genre of horror is cosmic horror, and when he saw the Iron Lung trailer, he was really excited for it beyond it just being a Markiplier project. So I knew that even if the movie didn't resonate with me, he would probably get something out of it that I wanted. However, coming out of the theater, our thoughts were largely the same. We loved it. It was an amazing movie that really pulled me in and got me really immersed in the world. And was it because of my love for Markiplier that I liked it so much? Maybe? It's hard to tell, honestly, because I can't separate that. Was part of my enjoyment because of how well he pulled off this incredibly ambitious project? I'm going to go ahead and say yes on that one, but that doesn't change that it is also just an amazing movie. The world was intriguing, and it gave just enough answers to tell a cohesive story, while still keeping the audience constantly guessing and wondering what was going on. Cosmic horror really revolves around the unknown, and I can only imagine how difficult it must be to try to balance telling a satisfying story while keeping enough of the mystery intact. And I think this movie pulled it off very well. We're still left with more questions than answers at the end, but that's by design. And I honestly believe there are more clues that will help us put together a better picture of what's going on, but that will require many more rewatches and going through it with a fine-tooth comb, which I love when a piece of media gives me the desire to do that. It is honestly one of my favorite things. Wanting to go through and dissect something for all of its secrets is just about the highest praise I can give. I did go see the movie twice last weekend, and I definitely got more out of it on the second watch through for multiple reasons, some of which I'll go into a bit later, but also just by the very nature of you're going to notice more once you have a better idea of what you're looking for. So I can't wait until I have the ability to rewatch this movie multiple times and with subtitles to pick up on all the bits of dialogue that are difficult to discern. Speaking of, I want to take a moment to talk about the sound for the movie because that is something I've seen people talking about online, and with good reason. I have auditory processing issues, so I'm used to struggling without subtitles, and I'd heard before going into the movie the first time that some of the dialogue was kind of hard to hear, so I knew that would be an issue for me. Since I was prepared, that didn't stop me from enjoying the movie, but it was difficult to make things out even beyond the things that were deliberately obscured, which there was plenty of that too, but I could tell the difference between what was supposed to be difficult to hear and what I was just struggling with. However, when I went to go see the movie again on Sunday in a different, newer theater, the difference was night and day. My husband and I walked out of that showing and we both looked at each other like, am I crazy or was that just way better quality? And it was, by a lot. The sound was clearer, way more immersive, and the visuals were also better. The first time we watched the movie, the darker sections were really hard to make out anything on screen, but that wasn't a problem the second time. And I think that part of this is because, like I said, the first theater we watched it in was an older theater that hasn't been updated in a while the second time was at the newest theater in town. But also, I do know that the sound for the movie was done in Atmos, and when we went the second time, that theater has that system. So if you see people complaining about the sound in this movie or it being too dark, know that that might very well be a theater issue rather than an issue with the film itself. And if you go to see it, try to go to a theater with Dolby Atmos. The other thing I've seen a lot of people talking about is pacing. And I get it, this movie is way slow at parts, but I think it kind of has to be. Without getting into spoilers, a large part of this movie revolves around a man being isolated in a small space for hours on end. And while there's certainly other things at play, we have to ask ourselves, how much of it is this otherworldly horror, and how much is this guy just going crazy? So if you don't have those lower sections and just skip to him going mad, there's nothing to earn that payoff, and it wouldn't make for a very good story. We live in a world where everyone wants instant gratification. There always has to be something going on, something stimulating. As a YouTuber, I'm told to edit out all my pauses, to always have something going on screen, because hesitating for even a second is enough to make someone click off a video. But sometimes a story needs a slower approach. Sometimes we have to be patient and let things build. I will say this is a criticism I heard before going into the movie the first time, and sometimes being prepared for something is enough to make it not bother you as much. It also bothered me even less on the second watch through because, for one, I had the better sound quality, so it was more immersive even during the slower parts, and also I knew where the story was going, so it gave me a greater appreciation of the build. So could some of the slower sections be trimmed down some? Maybe, but I don't know. I'm not an expert, and maybe you would lose too much from that. I definitely wouldn't say trim them down very much, and for sure, I don't think they should be cut out entirely. So other than those two things, there really isn't a whole lot to say in the way of critiques. Mark's acting was amazing. While I love the kind of caricature style he has on his channel, this was something else entirely. Mark was all on his own for the majority of the movie, and outside of supporting voices, he had to sell everything on his own and had very little to play off of, and he killed it. All the technical details that I don't understand the intricacies of, it all looked great to me, but I'm not going to pretend that I know what I'm talking about with it. Everything that went into creating the atmosphere was really well executed, and maybe some of the effects weren't top tier, but it's an indie film. So for that, I think it was really good. I also went back and rewatched Mark's playthrough of Iron Lung between my viewings, and it was a really, really faithful adaptation that really captured the spirit of the game. So I thought that Iron Lung was an amazing movie. I'd give it probably an 8 out of 10, but more than that, it's doing amazing things. For most of the weekend, Iron Lung was the #1 movie in America. I think that Mark said that Get Help overtook it at the end of the day on Sunday, but then Monday it was back to Iron Lung, which is incredible. An independently produced, directed, and distributed film stood toe-to-toe with a film distributed by Disney and spent most of the weekend in the lead. That is insane, and I am so proud of Mark. This guy, the first thing he said upon the movie making more money than he had anticipated was that that meant he could give the crew a bonus. And the second thing he said was that he hopes that this opens the door for more independent filmmakers to make the projects they want to make. He poured his heart and soul into this project, and his first reaction is thinking about others. And that is just incredible to me, and I can't think of anyone more deserving of this success. So whether you like Iron Lung or not, you have to be happy for Mark, and you have to appreciate the way that this movie is challenging the industry. That's it for today. Until next time, stay hyper.